apparently somebody had seen those transcripts of a conversation from the folks on the 7th floor. That's where all the leadership of the FBI is. And they were talking about the investigation into Hillary. And what they saw, or what the words that were, all throughout this thing were words like treason. They were saying things like, this is too big. It was so big that it could, bring down the government. They were talking about things like that they were going to basically shut down their investigation because they were concerned. They thought for sure she was going to be president. I mean, this is what everybody believed. And they thought there was going to be retribution. So they decided to cover up these crimes by essentially making these investigations go away. So when I hear this, I've taken that oath. I've taken that oath as a soldier. Mm-hmm. I took that oath as a Navy civilian and as a Marine civilian. I can't ignore that. And because I do believe, I've got a firm belief that someday I'm going to stand before my Maker, and he's going to ask me about these things. And that it's not just when we do evil things, that alone is not evil. Along with that is when we know that we can do good and we don't do good. That's just as bad. And so I had to pray long and hard about it because I knew this was going to be a career killer for me. I knew that this was going to end my career, potentially cause me, harm to my freedom, possibly cause harm to my health, and certainly, cause emotional distress probably for my family. But I prayed long and hard about it, and I did go and I searched. I had access, so I went and I searched into their databases, and I looked for if there was any truth to these things that were being said. And I didn't discover those transcripts because by the time that I worked up the courage to look for it, those had probably already been compartmentalized. But what I found was a ton of evidentiary documents, including suspicious activity reports and things like that, where the FBI had been investigating with 3 different field offices. You had Little Rock, Arkansas, New York City field office, and the Washington field office had 3 separate investigations that were open into Hillary Clinton. They had a ton of these documents that had basically showed the entire money trail. And you had 4 crimes that were listed on these documents that basically that they had identified: money laundering, public corruption, securities and exchange fraud, and terrorism financing. So these are what are listed. These are what she was being investigated for. And they had evidence, and they had analyst notes in these documents that said a high probability of those crimes. So I'm thinking, when I first see this, these have case numbers. I'm going, they're not covering this up. She's going to get indicted. And then you'll remember. So at first, I just kind of I made copies of these documents and on my computer, and it's on the classified side. And but I just kind of decided not to do anything. I was just going to wait and see. And then you'll remember, Comey comes out in front of the J. Edgar Hoover building, and he calls for a press conference, and then he's talking about the email server. And he's saying, oh, yes, we investigated. Now, we found thousands of, classified documents on this email server, even after she, bleach bitted, was it 30,000 emails or whatever?
Yeah, 33,000, I think that number.
So which that in and of itself is a crime. I mean, listen, I've had subpoenas come to me for documents in 27 years working for the government. There have been some times where I had gotten an email, from the security saying, "Hey, don't delete anything in your email because we have a leak or a spill or something like that, and we need to come examine." And so I, threat of going to jail. Absolutely, I'm not going to do anything. But yeah, she had things deleted, and then, but even still, they still found thousands of classified emails. And he goes up, and this is where really caught my attention. He said, and we found 7 email chains that had special access programs. Now, most people have no idea what that even means. That's above top secret, okay? Top secret is the highest clearance, but then you have what they have called compartmentalization. Yeah. In my career, I've only maybe a couple times been read on to, SAPs. And SAPs are no joke. Like, when you go to review these documents, they're in a folder with a cover sheet. I don't get to handle these until I'm in a secured space. Now, I worked in a SCIF, But even in the skiff, where everybody in there has a top secret clearance, I can't have these at my desk.
Yep.
All right, because they don't want somebody walking by and shoulder surfing and seeing what's in there because they don't have a need to know.
Yep.
So in that case, what happens is you go to your security officer. They first of all check to see if you're on the list. Then they do the combination, open up the safe, pull out that document, sign it out, hand carry it with you to a safe room where you can review these documents, and then they take them back. And so basically the only time you're ever alone with these documents is when you're sitting in this like little secured area. And so the fact that there were 7 of those, 7 email chains with these SAPs on them in her personal private email server in her home, there's no way you even get those out of a skiff and out of the hands of the security manager without knowingly violating the law.
So you're saying this was part of the 33,000 emails that were deleted off her Gmail?
No.
Like her
no,
Gmail,
no,
right?
These ones were found. So who knows how many were in the deleted ones?
Thousands and thousands.
There could be. We don't know.
But this was on her personal email.
Her personal,
like a Gmail.
No. This was a personal server that was being used to basically get around FOIA.
It was located in New Jersey, correct?
Yeah, Chappaquiddick.
Chappaquiddick, okay.
In the basement bathroom of her home.
Yes.
So she was stealing documents.
So we call that in the
secret
government we
documents,
call that espionage.
Right.
The legal definition of espionage, it fits. And I'll remind you, at that time, there was a naval, I think it was a submariner,
Yep.
who had been thrown in jail for doing nothing more than taking a picture of his hot rack.
Yeah, because
Okay, a hot rack's basically it's like a cot,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's anything on
Anything on the
submarine
sub's
is
considered class,
SSEI, and so
So, yeah, this guy, though, got thrown in jail for something that really wasn't a national security threat. But yet Hillary Clinton has SAPs on her server. And the only reason she has that server, because here's the thing. So in the government, everything has to be done on government computers. The reason is because of the Freedom of Information Act. They do not want some secret deals going on that cannot be verified at some point in time later. Yeah. And so the only reason that she had that server was to get around.
For sure.
That's my presumption, but that is what.
So even the existence of it was nefarious.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. So this is all going down. You have Comey admit in that interview that there was evidence that you had foreign adversaries that had accessed that server. So I'm talking to my buddies, from my days working at NSA, and I'm like, hey man, you seen this? This certainly looks like to me, and we all had the same thought. It's a Dropbox. You put some documents there, foreign enemies hack into it, get those documents, and now you can claim, oh, I didn't know they were going to do
by
that.
hack you mean sign into it.
Right. So I saw this, and the moment I saw that, I knew at that moment that everything that I had heard was true. They were going to cover this up, because the next words out of his mouth are, but no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case against somebody for this. She was just unsophisticated. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Yep. She was the Secretary of State.
Yep.
That means that she was at least, at minimum, a derivative classifier, which means she went through all the training. She had signed all of the non-disclosure agreements and everything. She knew damn well what she was doing.
Yep, 100%.
So at this point, now I'm kind of like, crap, what the hell am I going to do? And so I ended up having to blow the whistle. And I remember the night I came home and I told my wife. And we were living in Maryland, Union Bridge at the time. And I come home and I was not my normal talkative self. And my wife, we're laying in bed and she goes, what's up with you? You're not talking. You're not saying anything. Something's up. I can tell. And I just said, I think I got to blow the whistle on the FBI. And she sits up and goes, what? And then her next question was, why does it have to be you? Why can't somebody else do it? You're just a contractor.
That's a fair question.
It is. And I told her, I said, if not me, then who's going to do it? I mean, clearly I'm not the only person that's seen these, but nobody, as far as I know, is willing to do that. I mean, these guys that work there at the Bureau that are government employees, they probably got pensions, families,
My question is, why would they have the backroom conversations in a place where it's being recorded?
I don't know. Well, it's
like
well
they screw
because
themselves.
because it was classified, and maybe they thought they'd just compartmentalize it. But somebody saw those transcripts and then basically.
Well, if it's on record, Nate, won't somebody see it eventually?
Well, I mean,
Yeah, look at all the
apparently
things-
that hasn't really mattered because now
No.
here we are almost a decade later.
Yeah.
That's a
and
good point. Nobody really
nobody's actually been, never mind been charged, but I mean, nobody's never mind gone to jail or anything, but nobody's even been charged.
Yeah.
There's been there's been nothing from the DOJ. Even Donald Trump, who, was the famous for lock her up.
Yeah.
Even his DOJ did nothing. I mean, it's possible.
Well, he never
that
had any control.
No,
And
that's
that
fairly
was
obvious.
that was one of the things that really upsets me is when I hear these people say, "Oh, the FBI is supposed to be an independent agency." Bullcrap. That's not what the Constitution says.
Mm-hmm.
The president.
Well, the FBI is not in the Constitution, but
No, but he is the senior executive for all of the executive branch.
Yeah.
And there is nothing that is supposed to be out of his purview. He is the buck stops with him. So that is a fallacy that gets pushed, is that the FBI should be independent. No, we have a process of holding the president accountable. It's called impeachment. But really, everything else is supposed to be accountable to him.
yeah.
And but get back to the story. What happened after that was I ended up not knowing how to get the stuff out of there, because basically, as I started reviewing these documents, the names that are on a lot of these documents, people that knew about it, that were in the know, so they had to have been involved in somehow in the cover-up, were James Comey. You had Rod Rosenstein, who's the Deputy Attorney General, because he was the U.S. Attorney at the time of Uranium 1, and a lot of the documents were about that and what happened with that. Uranium 1 was a Canadian mining company that basically was given permission by the CFIUS committee, who Hillary Clinton was the chair of, to be purchased by a Russian energy company called Rosatom. Now, the problem is the FBI knew before that decision was made that Rosatom was basically an agent of the Russian government. They had all of the evidence. They had an intelligence report that basically showed this, and it was from like 2009 or something like that, and it showed that they were involved in a bribery and kickback scheme trying to infiltrate our uranium supply chain. So they know this before they allow for this sell to happen. And the FBI director at the time that went on, Robert Mueller. Who was the deputy at that time? James Comey. So basically, you're talking like a huge, huge scandal here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I end up, I can't go through my normal chain of command to blow the whistle. I couldn't go through the IG either, because Michael Atkinson, who's the Intelligence Community Inspector General at the time of the Uranium One thing, he's the guy who's the head of the Public Corruption Unit for the FBI, which means he's in the know.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War Podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.